Hey, welcome to Bear It All Naked Truth Reactions, where I watch my own show, Diary of an Ex-Ho, and tell you what I was thinking while it was happening. But it is my reaction to my episodes of Diary of an Ex-Ho. This is my unfiltered reactions. I'm going to tell you the things that I noticed, the things that I kept myself quiet about, and what I was thinking during the episode. So our first episode, Carole Freeman, my good friend. We're going to start it and see. Welcome to Diary of an Ex-Ho. I'm Sherry Hartman. I'll be your ex-ho. And today, our guest, Carole Freeman, bad boy magnet. So enjoy the show. And remember the old saying, always a bridesmaid when you're a hoe. Welcome to Diary of an Ex-Ho. I'm Sherry Hardman, your ex-ho, and this is my good friend, Carole Freeman. How are you today, Carole?
Hello.
All right, let me just stop right here and say a couple things. I don't like the way I said ho in the intro, number one. Number two, my hair looks great in this episode. Okay.
Oh, I am enjoying nearly 100 degrees and
Oh, and also I'm naked because this is my naked, unfiltered reaction to this video.
Phoenix, Arizona is about 99 degrees before I walked into this air-conditioned studio here.
Wow. I think I'm jealous. Here, Carole, you and I met doing stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think, like, I don't even remember, like, when I first met you, or I just remembered seeing you around and you were also real friendly.
Yeah, I want to say it was Tacoma Comedy Club, but I can't say for sure. Yeah.
Probably. But what I really liked when I really was when you were doing that Northwest Peaks.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I remember getting to know you a little better and just seeing like, man, this woman can run a room, like she knows her shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, then I used to really struck me as someone who, yeah, just knows what they're doing.
Oh, I appreciate that. I sure miss that room too. I don't know. I miss running that with Derek. We were good partners, and
Yeah.
I don't want to. Sad news here, but I don't know if you heard that he'd suffered a brain tumor last fall, and
Oh,
has
really?
had to have surgery, and so too young for that. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
This is where I should have said best wishes to Derek, and I didn't. So I'm saying it now. Wow.
So
But I picked you because you have a penchant for the bad boys.
Hmm.
And I've noticed this, and I've hung out with you in Vegas sometimes, so I've seen it firsthand. And that's not all we have to talk about, but it is interesting. And I guess my first question really is, what is it about the bad boys that you like?
Well, it's interesting because yeah, you've witnessed something that's very very weird. So I don't like the bad boys. The bad boys love me. They're like I'm a magnet to bad boys. And I have a bit about how
I'm going to interrupt her there because I understand what she's saying. They light up when they see her, but she lights up when she sees them.
Guy who's been to prison, and I have a history of that. So it's more of like, I think that they're very attracted to me. I don't know why. The type of guys that the ones that I'm going to date and have a serious relationship with tend to be more of like a little bit of a fixer, like they're not going to be the ones that have a prison record. They're the ones that have a little bit low self-esteem. They've got a lot of potential, and they just need somebody to love them and support them the right way. Now, this is all me psychoanalyzing my brain and my actions and my daily behaviors for 30 years. So it's not something I consciously choose, but when I am very attracted to a man, I'm like, oh, there's all the hallmarks of everything that is the thing that the person that I go after. So as far as the bad boys being attracted to me, the other thing I figured out about myself is that it's funny because I was thinking about this on the drive over here actually, is that what's really hot to me is a guy with confidence that's really into me. And it doesn't even really matter so much what they look like or how old they are, although, you know, there are some limits there. But like, if they're really confident and they're really attracted to me, I feel like it's kryptonite to me. Like, I'm like, I'm powerless. Take me now to your leader.
So okay, so I get that really big attraction to you. Do you think that it makes um like I try I'm going to try not to psychoanalyze things too much, but
Oh,
that's where my brain really goes. And so somebody this is me trying to ask a hard question without sounding rude. Else, or somebody might say, like, do you think that that shows a low self-esteem in you and that you need that other esteem from someone else to make you
mm.
feel good about yourself?
I love that you're asking that question because I don't think so at all. And I have a master's degree in psychology and I psychoanalyze myself to death. And I feel like I understand really clearly my actions and behaviors and why I do certain things. And I mean, you know, frankly, the type I'm attracted to, you know, the men I've been married to, sorry if they're out there listening and offended, but you know, the men I've been married to and the ones I've had longer term relationships with, they more mirror like the uh not behavior, but like pattern to my father, right? Like he was a wounded man and he hadn't been treated very well as a child, and you know, had some self-esteem issues because of that, had a lot of, you know, great talents and things like that. So I think that that's where that comes from as far as like that type of man that I'm into. And well, I mean, we're going to have to psychoanalyze this, right? And my dad would say things to me like, you know, he kind of put me on a little bit of a pedestal and would tell everybody how great and amazing I was. And so I think that that's probably where why
That
I'm
makes
so attracted to that as well, is that, you know, when somebody's enamored with me, it makes me feel alive. It makes me feel valued and attractive. And so I think that that's where that comes from. I don't know why the,
Carole. Now, I will say that I didn't know if I was buying this at the time. I know Carole a lot better now since we recorded this, and I do think she has a pretty healthy self-esteem.
the bad boys are really into me. I maybe it's just because I'm kind of a wild lifestyle and adventurous and outgoing, outspoken person. So maybe
Right.
maybe the doctors and the lawyers are not as attracted to that, or you know, people that pay their bills on time. I don't know.
That's interesting. Well, and now that you say that about your dad, then it does make more sense because that's one thing that I've always, and I think we may have even had this conversation like we're in Vegas or something like I just never understood it because it's like you're pretty, you have a cute figure, you have a lot going for you, and I'm like, why is she dating that guy?
We could bleep out the names, right? Actually, the thing that got me started into comedy was one of those of like, okay, this is a really good guy. He's got a house. He has a really good paying job. He's got his, are we swearing on here? He's got his shit together. And then I almost died while we were having sex. And then he's like, oh, peace out. I can't handle this. And, you know, he dumped me. So, you know, there was another guy that was a sportscaster up in the Seattle area that very handsome. And we went on a couple of, you know, really nice dates. Like I remember going once to Fish House in Bellevue, and I was like, okay, here we go. Like I can attract a man who's got his shit together. And after a few dates, he told me that he was going to go in to have hip replacement surgery and that he was going to have to go live with his dad for caretaking, and it was too embarrassing for him to see me anymore. And I was like, what? Like, and this was after I'd also been dumped in the hospital. So I was like, I have empathy for this. Like, I'll be there for you.
Right.
I'll bring you flowers. I'll come visit you in the hospital because this last guy didn't do that. And he's like, I just can't. I can't. And I'm sure it, you know, and he was even age appropriate for me too. You know, he was about my age. And
Right.
I just remember thinking like, wait a minute, another one, the rug pulls out. So I don't know what it is about my,
Okay. I know that I haven't said anything yet about uh, her almost dying when she has sex with someone, but don't worry. We'll come back to it.
dating life that I mean, yeah, I don't think it's that I have low self-esteem. that I choose these
And I don't think she has low self-esteem either, now that I know her better.
men because I don't think I can get something better. It's more of it's very intoxicating when a very good looking man is really, really into me, no matter what, what their label of good, bad,
Right,
or otherwise
right, right.
is.
And I don't want to like let that go. That you almost died having sex and then not even ask you to tell about that because that would be weird. So,
Just wouldn't be as interesting, right?
yeah, it's like, who is this guy that almost fucked you dead, or what? You know,
Yeah.
what happened? What
Yeah, it
happened there?
makes a great bit. It was my very first open mic at uh God rest its soul, rest in peace, Comedy Underground in Seattle. My very first open mic, I did the bit about this. But yeah, again, like finally met the one, really good guy. He's got his crap together. I mean, just to give you an example of like how financially set he was, that his alimony payments were $15,000 a month. So I was just like, okay, this guy's, not that if you want to pay that much money out, but have to be
Right.
doing pretty well financially to have that
Right.
kind of an obligation. And yeah, so things were really, really great. And again, like all the things I thought like were the check marks, or checklist of this is a good guy and not a bad choice for me. And yeah, we were going at it hot and heavy, and I ended up with a really, really bad headache, and I couldn't sleep for about 4 days, and I ended up going to the hospital. And I remember after 4 days of just this horrible headache of not being able to sleep, he's just like, well, maybe you should go to the doctor and get that checked out. And to me, that was like, oh my God, that's so sweet. He cares so much about me. He thinks I should go to the doctor. Maybe that tells something about pattern too. But anyways, yeah, so I went in and they ended up discovering that it had a vertebral artery dissection, which is similar to an aneurysm. So an aneurysm is where the outside of the vessel ruptures or tears or bulges, and the dissection is where the inside of the vessel tears.
Mhm.
And typically when people have that happen, the first symptoms of it are a stroke. And I never had a stroke, thankfully, but they put me in the hospital for 4 days, not hoping, expecting that I would have a stroke. So basically I was bed arrest. I literally was in bed jail. I was not even allowed to get out of bed because they were so afraid if I fell, I would die immediately. And they were trying to get my blood thinning levels to a certain level before they'd release me from the hospital so that I wouldn't die of a stroke.
Mhm.
And so day one, he came to visit me in the hospital, and day two, he was only talking to me on the phone. Day three, he was only texting me. And then day four, I woke up to a message from him saying that he decided he made the difficult decision to no longer date me. He was afraid that, if he ever touched me again, he would kill me, and that would ruin, if we can't have sex, then what kind of relationship can we have? Which, well, really, I agree. If we're not going to have sex, it's not much of a relationship.
Yeah.
So, I was completely devastated. And so psychoanalyzing that, this was a guy, it turns out that I found out that he had been, so also, even though he was somebody who was a good guy on paper, had his shit together, he still had the same pattern of he'd been abused as a child and had a lot of self-esteem issues, and his own father was extremely physically abusive to him. And I know that when people have physically abusive parents, you would think that they would just like, well, screw you, I don't ever want to see you. But the opposite happens. The children always want to get that person's approval and love. And so he'd gone his entire life trying to get his approval, and he had a PhD in organizational psychology. And even he told me, even when he got that, his dad was kind of like, meh, we'll see if you make anything of your life. So his dad never approved of him. And it turned out that his dad had died. And I don't know exactly, but I think his dad died of a stroke. And his last memories of his dad were in the hospital. And I kind of saw that on his face when he came in and saw me in the hospital. I think he was flashing back to that trauma, and that just made him completely, pull away and shut down. So it doesn't, psychologically, I can explain his behavior. It doesn't make it, any easier for what I went through. And
Right.
So it was months later that he reached out again and said, oops, I think I screwed up. And I said I debated about whether I wanted to see him or not. And one of my girlfriends said, well, maybe you can see him and have some closure and just talk through some things. So I did try to arrange like a lunch date with him, but he kept flaking out. And after like 3 times, I was just like, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, I don't,
Yeah,
I deserve,
let's
yeah,
close this. Forget closure. We'll close it ourselves.
yeah. I deserve better than that. And I think that's evidence that I do have good self-esteem, because when somebody does treat me poorly, I'm very easily able to go, no, you know, take off, take
Right.
off, hoser.
Poser is a term back from, I don't know, the 80s, early 80s. It's kind of a Canadian term that was from, oh gosh. Yeah, never mind. So long ago, I can't even remember. So, what is your definition of amazing sex?
Oh, let's see. So this is a term I've learned recently from TikTok, and I didn't know. I learned so many great things about TikTok about
Mhm.
sex, right? Like if I could go back to my 20s, knowing what I know now, just from what I've learned about myself on TikTok,
I don't
female
know
body
anything about
parts.
sex from TikTok, so
Oh my
tell me.
gosh, maybe my algorithm maybe is different than yours, but okay. So something called a pleasure top is
Yeah, my TikTok feed has dog rescue videos, politics, and lesbians, and I'm not even a lesbian. So I'm not getting any sex advice, but let's go listen to Carole.
from what I understand, is a man who's into, they get off on pleasing their partner, and so they're going to be like, they're going to be all tuned into what you want and need, and the more excited and pleasure you get, then the more pleasure they get from that. So it's this mutual thing, and I kind of tend to fall into that as well. And so if he's having a good time, I'm also really having a good time. So I kind of like that match, if we're both that, like it turns us on that the other one's having a good time and enjoying it. So that's my ideal pleasurable sex. And playing around, not taking it too serious, just trying to, you know, consensually try different things. Let's play around. Let's try this. Let's do this. I don't know. Have you heard of this? Let's try that. You know, just having that comfort with somebody and security and safety, that you feel like they're, no matter what you say or come up with, that they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's cool. So, you know, trust
Right,
and
right.
playfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. Yeah, communication is really good. You know, not too much though. I was
Right.
with a guy recently that was like, it was like he was directing I don't know what you call, like directing traffic at every turn. Like it was too but he was also very, very selfish. Like he wanted every single second to be about what he wanted. He didn't give a crap about what I wanted.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
know. That's it's interesting because I don't have her. I told my husband not to watch this. So there's I'm
Like
afraid to
this?
say some
Oh,
things. Yeah, I'm like, I
okay.
just don't. He does not watch the podcast, by the way, unless there's a clip I want him to look at. I told him, I'm going to do this new podcast. You really probably shouldn't watch it, you know. But now I totally forgot what I was going to say. But oh, sometimes people say, like, okay, my ex was a sex addict.
Mm,
And that's kind of tied into the bad boy thing. And it'd be like,
mm,
why do women go after these guys? Well, if you're a sex addict, you're really good at sex
mm,
because you're chasing after it all the time. And like in his case, he was a pleasure person. Like he just
mm.
want, I mean, I would sometimes fall asleep. He would be pleasuring me. I would fall asleep, wake up, and he was still going hours later,
Wow.
So I mean, so I get that part of it. Um, Somebody that's directing things and communicating, yeah. But what about dirty talk?
Oh yeah. I think that's really fun.
Hmm.
And uh, you know, I think playful role playing is really fun. You know, different outfits, costumes are fun, just kind of trying different things. I mean, I don't know. Should we go through the whole I should do the whole list of things that are fun I've tried to like, don't like, or how
If you want to,
uh um oh my gosh, I'm like, my my mother maybe hear this, but she thought she'd probably be okay with it, and probably the people that would be weirded out by it probably would never listen to this podcast. So I think we'll be okay. Oh my gosh. Now I'm blushing a little bit.
I have gotten way less backlash or anything from this podcast than I thought I would. I thought I'd have people protesting it being dirty, and I don't, not at all. So I think there's going to be people not liking me being naked, but oh well.
But the color come through. I've been to swingers parties, you know, group engagements with people that I trust and have fun with. I've I'm like, if it was you and I in our hotel room in Vegas,
Right.
I would have no hesitation.
Right. I know.
Like, Sherry, how much detail do you really want me to go into here?
Yeah. That is totally up to you, because I have other questions that we could just
Okay.
move on if you want to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of anything that would be like interesting or worth mentioning or anything like that, instead of just like a checklist where somebody's going to be like, "Hey, girl, I got you. I'm going to take care of you now."
Well, let's go back a little bit though. So you've told us about your dad. So what kind of like romantic relationship did your parents have?
I didn't see that he was affectionate and loving to her. It was just more of like they played the roles in the family, and he went to work and made money, and she made us dinner and took care of the house type of thing. They never went on dates. I remember like a quick kiss. It was kind of all that I remember as far as them romantic. I have a scar on my thumb from walking in on them having sex one time. So I know they did, but that was, so yeah, no example there of like a loving, committed.
Now, why didn't I ask her how she got a scar from walking in on her parents having sex? Like I pictured it, somebody bite her. Did she slam her finger or her thumb in the door? Like what happened? Why didn't I ask that question?
Romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm. So when you were young, do you remember like your first like sexual awakening? Like, I don't know, your first sexual feelings or first time masturbating or anything like that?
I remember, oh gosh, like very, very young. I remember having this. These are things I haven't told anybody, Sherry. I remember having like a large Raggedy Ann Andy doll, and the big foot on that was felt good to rub on certain places of my body, and it was really, this was a different day and age, right? So when I was 15, I was dating a guy that was 20 or 21, and I remember, I'll tell my parents now, and they're like, "No, he wasn't that much older than you." Like, like, yeah. But it's interesting because I remember, so when I was growing up, I actually didn't have any autonomy. I didn't have any, I no self-esteem or very little self-esteem. I felt like I had very little say. And again, I don't want to, disparage my father's name, but the way he treated my mom, it gave me the impression that like I didn't have any control over my own body, and that men would just do things to me that I had no say or control over. And I was just like, you just had to tolerate it. And so until I was probably 21, I was introverted. I was very quiet, shy. I just felt like I had no control over anything that happened to my body. And so I was seeing this guy, but I wasn't attracted to him. I didn't like him. I mean, I liked him as a friend. I grew up riding dirt bikes, and my dad would invite him to go dirt bike riding with us. And I liked him as a friend, but he invited me to this party with the older boys one time that were in high school. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to go hang out with the older boys. I'll be cool then. And then he took it as we're going on a date. And I'm just like, uh-oh, I guess I'm on a date now with him. And I didn't want to be on a date with him. And then I just went along with it. Then he's like, I guess she's my girlfriend. And I guess I have a boyfriend now. Another example again of like how I felt like I had no say in anything. And I just went along with it. And I remember one time us kissing, and that was the first time that I felt like downstairs waking up and something was going on down there, and kind of like, what's this weird feeling, you know? And I wasn't at a place where I was ready to have sex or anything like that, but it was like that was the first time that I felt like something down there was being aroused, and it was like, that was weird. And then so that was pre-high school, and then going into high school, it was when, you know, all the girls that I knew were, you know, had most of them had longer term boyfriends, and they were beginning to lose their virginity, you know, and it was just so matter of fact of like, well, I guess you're a woman now, you know. It was like we didn't tell details or anything. It was just like, well, you know, they'd been with their boyfriends for several years, and it was like, okay, we did it, okay, you know. So yeah, and again, it was just at a time where, and I wish I could talk to some young girls now and see. I think it's a very different sexual atmosphere now, right? Like, I think girls would say they were choosing to do it, but I feel like at that time it was just something that, like, when a boy was ready to do it, you just did it because that's what you did, you know. I don't know. Did you feel that way when you were younger?
Well, I'm trying to remember because, like, my very first, like, real boyfriend that I went on dates with and stuff, I was 16 and he was, I don't know, 17. He was older. Maybe he was 19 because I remember my dad saying, he's been in the Navy and he's older than you. I don't like it. And I remember being so horny for him and trying to get him to have sex with me. But I met him at church. He knew my parents, and so I was a good girl, you know.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to do that. And I remember him being on top of me one night on the couch, and we both were fully dressed, and he came in his pants. I just wetness. I was like, but so that was frustrating to me that I was trying to go for it and he wasn't giving it up. But like the next year, I just turned into a raging whore. So after I was done with him, then it was just I was looking for it. So
I think my primary hoe years were after I turned 21, after my first divorce. So I started dating my first husband when I was 16, and it was right about the time when my parents were getting divorced.
let me just say, I love women talking to each other, using the word hoe, not as an insult, but just as a what? Just as a word that we're not ashamed of. You know, we went through a phase, it was a time in our lives. It was part of our personality, whatever. I love this for us.
And we were together for 3 years, got married when I was 19. It was just like, in that small town I grew up in, that's what you did. You just got married, and then you had kids, and you got a double wide trailer on 5 acres, and life was done, you know?
Right.
And so it was after, you know, 2 years of marriage, we were not the right fit. Like, I was in college and wanted to go off and see the world, and he wanted to stay in that small town the rest of his life. And, you know, after some of the arguments we had, I was just like, oh, that's why you don't get married at 19, because you don't know who you are yet. Right. And so, you know, one of our final fights was that, you know, I was going to move out, and he's like, well, you could never take care of yourself. You could never support yourself. You need me to take care of you. And I'm like, oh yeah, watch me. And I went out and it was like a night and day difference in my personality. I was just like, I discovered my own, you know, sexuality and the power that comes with that as a woman, and being able to, you know, attract, and I don't know, control, if that's the right word or not, but like being able to, you know, get the attention of men, which I'd never really felt like I had that power before. But I also had the really misguided fantasy that if I was good enough in bed, then they would love me. And I could look back now and see, like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
You know, and so I kept sleeping with a bunch of men then, because I thought that that's how I was going to find somebody to love me, is that, you know, that's how, yeah, I didn't have anyone to talk to understand that's not how it works. Mm-hmm. And yeah, but then I, which felt like a really long time, but I ended up getting married again at 23, and I was married for 7 years. And so most of my life I've been, well, okay, the first half of my life I was a serial monogamous person, and just was in long-term relationship after long-term relationship. And then last 20 years of my life, well, that's not quite half my life. I've been mostly single. So, yeah.
Well, a couple of things I wanted to ask you about real quick, because we were just talking and you said something. Well, I really just wanted to make a note of when someone tells a woman she can't do something, that's really when we just come out full force, isn't it? It's like, oh, I remember my dad saying to my mom one time that she wasn't going to know you're not going to go shopping. Oh, I'm not, am I? And I remember her going
Yeah.
shopping. And I remember as a little girl sitting there thinking, yes, and the other thing about feeling like your body's not your own, this is just a question that I have heard a lot, that when you tickle children to the point where they're like not liking it, that really is a form of abuse, and also it teaches them that they don't have control over their bodies. So do you remember being tickled as a child?
Yeah, as you're talking about that, and I couldn't agree with that more. And in fact, I think that just tickling in general should not, and maybe it's just because of my own experience now. And Sherry, I love that you asked that because I'd never ever thought about that ever. But like, yeah, one of my uncles, I'm not going to name him, but yeah, one of my uncles, and he, I think it was just he just didn't know how to relate to kids, and that was what he thought, And I do remember that of like, he just had no stop, and it was just like it always went too far and always ended up with us crying. But yet, whenever we'd hang out with him, and he never did anything sexual, I'll be clear with that. He never did anything sexual, but it was just still that crossing that line of like letting the little recognize when it's just too much. So
this is what I love about being friends with Carole Freeman, as this exchange of ideas and the way we talk about psychology and relationships and all that kind of stuff. I find it fascinating.
I don't know. I just think you should never tickle a child ever. So
yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting because I had never thought much about it. My feet are super ticklish. Like a lot of times will take like a Vicodin before I go get a pedicure, just to kind of numb myself so I can just handle my feet being touched. And my dad used to get me down and just tickle the hell out of I remember kicking him in the nose one time. But I never really thought much about it until I'm sure I've told you, I've got a lot of years of recovery in Codependence Anonymous. And one day at a CODA meeting, we were reading, and it happened to be my turn to read, and it was about tickling and how that's abusive because it teaches you that you have no control. And I just started sobbing and just really that it really hit home with me. And so I've always remembered that ever since then. And I think it's something that people don't know. And if nothing else that you gain from this, don't tickle your kids. I mean, maybe coochie coo a little 2 times when they're a baby and that's it. But just don't do that.
Yeah.
Especially to little girls.
It's so powerful too. And I know that for my mom too, she grew up, a household of 2 daughters and 2 sons. And I know back then, especially, and probably even, people my age, but it was common that the boys picked on the girls a lot. And, she had a lot of stories of, them tying each other up in the yard and nobody coming to rescue them, and, the hold them down and spit on their face type of stuff, So I can only imagine, how much more she went through that made her not be able to stand up and feel like she had any autonomy over her own body either.
Yeah. And they say, don't tell little girls, oh, when he's pulling your hair, that just means he likes you. Like, don't let that be the thing that girls think boys do to people that they like.
Yeah.
There's so much, I'm much older than you, and there's so much that has changed over the years, that just from us learning about it. But it's like, one thing for sure is just the way that women have been treated by men in particular. Back then, like if you look at movies that we watched when we were young from a perspective from today, it's like, holy shit, like we were horrible things happened to us too. So it's good that it's getting better, and I don't think it's ruining their sexual relationships. It's got to only make it better, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. We're not men. We can only assume what they think, but I gotta think that, uh, two people are having a good time at the same time. It's a lot better experience than if only
Right.
one person's having a good time.
You would think so.
Yeah, depends
All
on their
right.
perspective. Yeah.
What's your favorite porn category
Oh,
that you
my
feel like
current, like
owning up to?
my current probably thing that I will that I would search for would be big cock.
Yeah,
And
well, that's
yeah,
that's pretty normal.
yeah.
Normal. All right. Is there anything you won't do sexually? Like, never doing that.
Poop play. Poop play I think is out. I don't want poop in my mouth.
Yeah.
I frankly have never eaten ass myself. I probably have a phobia over that. I mean, I don't know, you and I growing up, that wasn't just a normal thing that happened. I've had mine eaten. I was like, oh, okay, that's I can see where people would enjoy that. So I still have I would say I have a mental block of doing it myself. I can't say I would never. Um,
You know
but
what
I
it is? You know what? For me, and I have done that. And probably the first time I ever did that, let's see, Jimmy Carter or Ronald Reagan were in office. Okay. But uh, for me now, it's not the act of doing it like to my husband, but it's the position he would have to get in
oh
order for me
yeah.
to do it is just really unappealing to me. Either way, like I picture two different ways, and no, I don't want to see that.
And I think it's just my perception of, men are pretty stinky and dirty down there. But I can't say I would never would. I think it's just more of a mental block for that. But the whole like, yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah, poop play, actually,
Right.
little shit play. No,
Actual poop.
I
Yeah.
I think that would definitely be the no. Um, the suffocation stuff, where you've got the plastic hood over your face, that's not of interest to me. I get pretty claustrophobic, and I there was another one there where I was just like, yeah, I don't think I would do that now. It just left me. Oh, I kind of have a hang up too of like, it's funny, my girlfriend and I were talking about that in the pool this weekend, and she's like, she went through a phase where she was really into watching pegging porn, like pegging a guy.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I've watched that before and I'm fascinated by it. And I think I would do it to a guy, but then I don't know if I wouldn't want to date a guy that wanted me like to do that regularly, which I think is just another hang up as well. Actually, I met a gay guy once at a gay bar who for some reason ended up getting that topic out, and he was saying that was homophobic if you wouldn't date a guy that wanted you to do that. And I'm like, I don't know, we all have different sexual preferences, right? Like uh
Well, if it's something that doesn't really float your boat, who wants
yeah,
it all the time?
yeah. So he
Get
tried to
that.
tell me that I was homophobic, and I'm like, I think that's the farthest thing from the truth. But
Right.
yeah, I think those are probably only the few things that would. I mean, I don't. I mean, some people are really into like pain BDSM stuff. I mean, I'm probably on the very mild end of like a little experimental, like light flogging, light biting, that kind of stuff. Little light spanking. That's the very mild end of it.
Right.
But the very far end of it, the dom and the serious pain stuff, I'm not. That's not my thing either.
You know what I have found, or what I found when I was like kind of uh, messing around with guys a lot, is that I'm a very dominant person. I
Mm.
want to be the dominant one. Um, but a lot of the guys that were submissive, like they purposely do stuff to piss you off so that you can punish
Oh.
them. They do stuff wrong. And I'm like, that is not how it works in my brain. In
Okay.
my brain, I'm the boss. And that frustrated the hell out of me. So,
Mm.
yeah.
What I've heard from somebody who's more experienced in that world than me was that the the sub is actually the one in control, whereas the dom, like people from the outside think that the dom is doing stuff and in control of the sub, but it's more of like the sub is the one in control, and the dom actually gets pleasure from the sub getting what they need, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't, I just didn't like that of it. But then it's like,
Yeah.
then I end up with my husband who is very much, he's not, I wouldn't say he's dumb, but he's very much the aggressor in our aggressor. I don't know about that word.
The assertive one?
He is. He's the, it's like I'm all of a sudden like a little pillow princess because he's just.
I think that made me think though of a topic, Sherry, that I think is kind of interesting to me right now, is that because of the Me Too movement, like how we have to feel like we have to be so careful of admitting like that it is a turn on, and not like the rape way, but like a man who's dominant and takes control and is aggressive, right? We like that to a certain extent. Some people do, but we're also afraid now to admit that. Like,
I know. It's kind of ruined a lot of things for me. Like back in the day, if a guy would say, "Can I kiss you?" we would like, like we hated that kind of shit. Don't ask me. And if you're gonna ask me, then the answer is always gonna be no.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your partner and their preferences and likes, and finding that match, and there is something.
There's a lot more landmines though than there was back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like, yeah.
Oh, I got one last question for you. Do you have anything on your sexual bucket list?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh,
You don't really have to share it because
this is so funny. I don't remember the last time I've been blushed so much on this show. I would like how about a little DP?
Oh, yeah.
I did one time in my 20s, two guys, but it was a, more of an Eiffel Tower situation. Fantasy of the
Wait a minute, Eiffel Tower.
One in the mouth, one in the pee.
Okay, got it.
The other, and I don't know. My thought is that probably in reality it's not nearly as hot and sexy as in my brain or watching it. And then you experience it and you're like, okay, never mind. Kind of like 69 when you're 12 or 14 and you're like, oh, that's gonna be so fun and hot, and you do it and you're just like, this is awkward and uncomfortable and this smells weird. And so I think that's probably, it's a fantasy, but I don't know if it's going to be all that I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you give us your Instagram?
Carole Freeman Comedy, and Carole has an E on the end. It's a fancy French spelling, so Carole Freeman Comedy.
Oui.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that's how they can follow you, and I hope this doesn't get you like a bunch of perverted messages in your inbox, but
maybe this will, I'll be starting a new OnlyFans of secret confessions of Carole or something.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was good talking to you as always.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for having me, and great questions. And you asked me some questions that make me think about some things I hadn't thought about before. So,
all right. Bye. All right, there you have it. The first episode of Diary of an XO, and the first episode of me watching Diary of an XO naked. So I'm going to put my shirt back on and go live my life. But thanks for hanging out here with me. Thanks, Carole.